Joining us now, Andrew Weissmann, former FBI general counsel, former chief of the criminal division in the Eastern District of New York. He's also an MSNBC legal analyst. What do you make of that speech that he gave today? Because there is this question that everything Donald Trump says is outside of the norm, and to some degree, that's become normalized. It shouldn't be. But it's more than that. He said things that were not only untrue, but if accepted, compromise our system of laws and governance.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to be said. I do think it's worth noting something that you picked up on is who was there. And it was not a speech that was given to the career men and women of the Justice Department. This was a hand-selected group of people, some from the department, some not from the department. But that's notable. Normally, when you have an incoming administration, one, the president usually is not there talking to them, but there's nothing that prohibits that, especially if it was going to be a speech about policy. But here, it was not given to the sort of ordinary men and women. This was trying to be much more of a campaign speech. And so I don't think that it is reflective of where the department as a whole is. There's still lots of men and women in the department who are there to do the right thing, even if the leadership isn't. Second, everything about the speech conveyed the lack of independence of the department from the White House. And that is what separates us from an autocracy. That independence is a norm, and it's not a law, but that is a norm there is good reason that Republican and Democratic presidents have adhered to that norm because they understand how dangerous it is. That's gone, completely gone. And then the final thing is, it's really notable. They're really, other than the courts, as we were saying as we were waiting for this segment, is other than the courts, there are no checks on this president. You really get the sense that it is so different than the first Trump administration. This, I don't think, could have happened in the first Trump administration. And a good sign of that is today he issued yet another broadside on a defense firm. There's now another firm, Paul Weiss, incredibly eminent firm. He issued it after a judge found unconstitutional the one that he issued just the other day.
Right. He had told the government they can't do business, they have to cancel all their contracts with particular law firms that he's got some beef with.
Right. But here's a president who's like, oh, a court said I can't do it, I'm doing it again. That is what we're dealing with. And so your point that you've got a adjudicated, convicted criminal as the president, you can see it because you have a court that has said you cannot do this, and it is having zero effect on the fact that he just did it again to another respected firm.
There is a chill that is setting in because of the firings, the threats, the law firms, the universities, dropping people's names randomly. You were one of the lucky ones today. Talk to me about that. And I know you're an outward-facing guy. You're out there. You've probably heard a lot of things in your life, a lot of threats. Like journalists, you face a lot of stuff. But talk to me about the effect of these types of things, the naming of people, the going after people, the threatening of people.
Well, it's about the chilling effect. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the strategy now, again, I never like personalizing because I'm supposed to be here like analyzing the situation. So leaving sort of me aside, the whole idea is to divide and conquer. If you issue a threat on Covington Burling, a reputable law firm, the idea is all law firms think about it. If you have a threat against a company, then you're sitting there going, well, I don't want to be the next company. I mean, that is a classic tactic of using fear, the concern about the fact that, this is the leader of the free world taking these steps. That is not a fun thing to be at the other end of it. It can have enormous consequences in terms of business, in terms of reputation, in terms of the work that a university does for its students, for its faculty. And so, that's the kind of thing that you have to figure out how to deal with. But the one thing I would say is if you do not unite, if you do not sort of stand your ground together, then you are caving.
Let's talk about the fact that to a large degree, the courts are the only bulwark that we've got. There are people, by the way, let's not forget, people and their votes and their demonstrations and their phone calls. That is actually happening. It's not happening the same as it was in Trump 1.0 with massive rallies, but there are protests going on around this country. But talk to me about how well you think the courts are doing at the moment.
You know what? I think leaving aside the Supreme Court, where we really don't know the answer, but there's signs from the fact that we've had a couple 5-4 decisions that have been against Donald Trump recently, that we are seeing the courts do their job and being fearless in doing that. Birthright citizenship has been sort of resoundingly by Republican-appointed and Democratic-appointed judges saying, can't do it, unconstitutional. The firing of probationary employees, 2 federal judges, both said the exact same thing. You have Beryl Howell saying, you know what, these executive orders fly in the face of the First Amendment. And so I do think that you are seeing the judges do what they are supposed to do. And the one moral from this is, I would say to the members of Congress, is look over there. They're doing their job.
Why don't you as well?
You should as well, and not be thinking, you know what, I don't have to do it because they're doing it. Because I just don't think that is going to be enough in this country. And of course, the people are the ultimate check. But, you know, an election isn't going to happen for a while. So right now, in terms of the interim check, there are just a few senators who could put a stop to all of this. And it's really impossible to think that there aren't senators who know darn well that this isn't sort of commensurate with what the Constitution requires and what their oath of office requires.
So where there are lower courts who say things like this goes against the First Amendment or this goes against the 14th Amendment, does all of this, and by the way, the speech that Donald Trump gave at the Department of Justice, does this make it harder for John Roberts and the conservatives on the court to defend Donald Trump because he flouts what we know to be law? I mean, he said at some point in his speech, right, that can't be legal. Donald Trump knows what's legal and what's not. There's no mystery here. Yeah,
well, just one aside on that, when he's saying, you know, it should be illegal to criticize judges. So that, of course, is the First Amendment allows you to do that.
And he takes advantage of that a lot.
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, he has been criticizing judges. So like the irony of that is, I mean, there's no logic. There's no through line. By the way, if it's illegal to criticize judges, then the 11th Circuit, a very conservative circuit, reversed Judge Cannon in fairly scathing language, not once, but twice. Were they committing a crime? And were they just some part of the sort of liberal establishment that has now suddenly taken over the 11th Circuit? I do think that the further he goes, the harder it is to win over 2 critical votes that he needs. And the swing votes now are the Chief Justice and Amy Coney Barrett. And, you know, if you keep doing this, we saw something like this happen right after 9/11, where the administration sort of went too far in the war on terrorism, and you saw even sort of conservative justices saying, you know what, you do not need more than what is given in the military courts to fight this, and sort of pushing back. So there is, you know, that, which is, you know, what is the expression that, you know, pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered? You know, you have to be careful.
Andrew, good to see you as always. Thank you. Andrew Weissmann.